Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite game mechanism in Uwe Rosenberg's Cottage Garden. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that uses these Tetris-shaped tiles to be placed on these little garden patches that you have. You're trying to fill up the entire garden with the tiles, and when you do, you score for the garden that you made, you give it up, and then you do it again. So it's a little bit like patchwork. It doesn't actually feel like patchwork, but it has elements of patchwork in that you're trying to fill up as much as you can, and you score at certain points in the game. The components, as you can kind of see, are really beautiful. The art is beautiful. It comes with this neat little wheelbarrow that you put together. But my favorite mechanism in the game has to do with how you acquire the tiles. You use this board. It's a double-sided board for different player counts. So here's like the 4-player board. And so on each of these squares, you're going to have a different tile that's just randomly put out there. And on your turn, you buy one of these tiles. I'll explain more about that in a second. But first I want to mention that I love in games when the game gives you an opportunity to plan ahead and think ahead about your next turn. This helps cut down on downtime because you're doing something even when it's not your turn. And B, when it becomes your turn, you're not faced with all the options that you weren't able to think about in advance. There aren't many games that do this anymore, or do the bad thing that I'm saying, which is if you can't plan ahead for your turn at all, because the thing the player does right before you go changes everything. There are a few games that come to mind, and I don't play those games. And I think a game does this really well when you don't have perfect information because there's some player interaction. The things the other players do will affect your turn, but you can still think ahead about maybe have one primary option and then a backup option if other players do the thing that you thought they were going to do, as you see in many worker placement games. So Cottage Garden does something really, really clever with this, which is, and I'll use the 4-player board as an example. I'm not sure if you can see it, but if you look on these lines up here, can you see little arrows? Let's see if I can pull it away a little bit. I don't know if you can see them. They're right here. There's like a little arrow right here. There's 2 little arrows. Here there's 3, here there's 4, and here there's 1, and then it starts over. And what those arrows refer to are you. They refer to you as the player. The symbol of 1 arrow refers to player number 1. 2 arrows refers to player number 2. And what they're telling you is, as players pick up tiles, like on my turn, if I'm player number 1, there will be a token right here. And as soon as I take my turn, I'll move that token here. And what this is telling me is the next player can pick a tile in this column. And then the token moves here. And the next player picks a token from this column. And so on until it becomes rows and moves around this board. What this is allowing me to do is after I make my pick, say in this column, the board communicates to me that my next pick will be here, which is a diagonal. So I'm picking from the tiles in this diagonal row here. And so I'm able to plan ahead about my turn. Even after I take my little turn, I place my tile, I'm able to look and see when my next turn will be and what my options will be in that turn for picking up a tile. This is really, really beautiful. And it's really almost just a graphic design choice that makes this mechanism work so well. But also, the mechanism is that the board is balanced perfectly in terms of how players take their turns so that you can have perfect information about where your next turn will be. Now I say perfect information because it isn't actually truly perfect, because if I say in this example that I use, so say I buy one from this column, and then these other players are going to buy from these columns. When it gets to me and I'm on the diagonal, there are cells in each of those columns that could have been bought from. So I don't have perfect information about what I'll be able to buy at that point or what they'll be refilled with, but I have some information to go by so I can start to think about my turn. This is really, really clever. I love the ability to plan ahead, even just a little bit about my next turn. And the graphic design and the mechanism of balancing this board so that I have that information is really, really helpful for me as a player, and I think it's really, really clever. I'd love to hear your thoughts about games that maybe use a mechanism or even just a graphic design device like this to communicate to you the choices that you'll have on your next turn so you can start to think ahead. Or you can share your favorite mechanism in Cottage Garden. Thanks.